Deebo Samuel still out there. Joey Bosa still hovering around San Francisco. Michael Trigg starting to feel like a real draft option. And George Kittle playing recruiter for Mike Evans. We're past the point of random offseason chatter. These are real signals from a team that knows it cannot miss here. Because when John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan, and the market all start pushing different possibilities at the same time, the pressure stops feeling abstract and starts feeling like contender pressure. So today, we're going to read this thing for what it is. Hit subscribe now because what's building in Santa Clara could raise or lower the ceiling on this entire 49ers season. And the main pressure point starts with a name that felt like a closed chapter. Deebo Samuel. Look at why this hits harder now than it would have at any other point. Not because there's concrete evidence that something is moving today. There isn't. That's not the point. The point is that he's still available. The draft is getting closer. The market has cooled off. And when a player with that kind of profile stays out there longer than expected, the conversation shifts. What used to feel like nostalgia starts looking a lot more like calculated value. Because the 49ers know exactly who this player is. They know the system he works in. They know what he can do with the ball in his hands, what he brings after the catch, how physical he is, how much stress he puts on a defense. And for a team that still sees itself in the Super Bowl mix, that matters. This isn't about adding a random name to round out the roster. This is about a fit that, if the price drops and the timing lines up, would come with almost no adjustment period. But that's also where the pressure shows up, because it exposes where San Francisco still feels unfinished. If revisiting Deebo makes any sense at all, it's because this offense still doesn't look fully complete. And that should bother people. A real contender shouldn't be carrying that kind of something's missing feeling this late in such an important phase of the offseason. Especially when there's emotional baggage tied to it, when there was tension before, when a lot of people treated that split like it was permanent. So no, this can't be framed like something that's close, that would be a reach, but you also can't wave it off like it's empty noise. The market has pushed this conversation back onto the table, and when a door like that cracks open again, even a little, John Lynch is the kind of executive who at least takes a hard look at the value. That's the heart of it. San Francisco may still be strong, but it doesn't feel like a fully settled roster yet. And if Deebo is back in the discussion at all, it's because this window is demanding answers, not memories of what the team used to be. Now, if the Deebo situation exposes internal pressure on the roster, the Joey Bosa angle pushes this into a different lane. Market opportunity. And that changes the read in a pretty major way. Because with Joey Bosa, this isn't about emotional history or reconnecting with someone who already knows the building. This is about a real pass rush need and a championship window that doesn't have time for wishful thinking. San Francisco needs to get more dangerous up front again. It needs more consistent pressure. It needs to avoid putting everything on one name or counting too much on young, unproven pieces. That's exactly why this rumor keeps hanging around. This connection didn't come out of nowhere. The idea of the Bosa brothers on the same defensive front has been out there for years, and from a football standpoint, it has always made sense. Joey Bosa may not be at the absolute peak version of himself anymore, the version that made him one of the most feared edge rushers in football. But he's still a player with technique, instincts, heavy hands, and finishing ability. He still changes how you're viewed up front. And for a defense trying to take over games again, that's not some minor detail. That's real value. But here's the important part, and probably the most honest part of this whole conversation. There is no sign that a deal is close. There's no concrete indication that the 49ers are gearing up for some final push to get this done. John Lynch himself has spoken in the past in a way that clearly cooled expectations, especially when it comes to money and overall practicality. So nobody should be treating this like it's around the corner. At the same time, the market changes the math. When a veteran at that level stays unsigned longer than expected, the entire feel of the move changes. What once looked unrealistic starts to look like a value play. And that's why San Francisco stays in the conversation. Not because it's easy, not because it's likely today, but because smart contenders know how to sit on their hands until the exact right opening appears. And think about the opening that could show up here. If the draft doesn't deliver an immediate answer for that edge pressure need, if the market stays cold, if Joey is still sitting there without a landing spot, the Niners could suddenly be staring at a rare chance to add experience without having to sell it as a panic move. At that point, it stops feeling like an expensive dream and starts feeling like a surgical addition for a defense that's still trying to find its ideal shape. That's why this name is dangerous for the rest of the NFC. Because it isn't only about talent, it's about timing. And when top-end talent meets the right timing, That's how a market opportunity turns into a contender move. Then the story starts climbing in a different way, because now the conversation shifts from the expensive veteran to the kind of draft swing that can protect the window from the inside. Michael Trigg. At first glance, a lot of people will look at this and say, alright, it's just another tight end prospect. But it's not that simple. George Kittle is still one of the best at the position, but he's coming off a major recovery. Jake Tongas showed some encouraging signs, but he's still not someone you can point to today and call a settled answer. So the 49ers could go into this draft thinking about more than depth. They could be thinking about succession, athletic upside, and long-term explosion at the position. And that's where Trigg gets interesting. Physically, he jumps off the screen. Size, length, speed, ball skills, strength after the catch. He's the type of athlete who can create matchup problems against linebackers and safeties, and in a creative offense, that can turn into a real weapon. That part is real. The question is how quickly any of it translates to the NFL. Because there's a very real check on the hype here. He is not a finished tight end. He has concentration drops. He's not a polished route runner yet. And as an inline blocker, there's still a lot to question. That matters on a team trying to win immediately. San Francisco can't miss on a mid-round pick thinking it's getting someone ready for January, only to find out it drafted a developmental piece that needs time. But that's exactly why this works as the next step in the story. It suggests the franchise may be thinking on two tracks at once, reinforcing the present while protecting against a future need before it becomes a problem. If that read is right, Trigg wouldn't be an instant fix. He'd be an upside swing, someone you develop behind a star and hope can eventually break out in a system that knows how to create space for unique athletes. So the signal here isn't desperation, it's smart urgency, and that matters too. Real contenders don't just chase the moment, they attack the present without setting themselves up for trouble later. And here's the contrast that changes the feel of the whole conversation. While part of this is still about rumor, patience, and a slow-moving market, this next piece is concrete proof that San Francisco remains a destination for star players. Mike Evans chose the 49ers even though he had a bigger offer from the team he spent his career with. And before he made that call, he reached out to George Kittle. That's not some throwaway behind-the-scenes detail. That's a real contender asset. Because when a veteran of that caliber wants to talk to someone inside the building before making his decision, and that person sells the franchise with conviction, the message to the rest of the league is loud. Kittle didn't win him over with empty recruiting talk. Based on what was said publicly, he talked about the structure, the way the organization takes care of players, the environment inside the building, and above all, the obsession with winning a Super Bowl. That matters. In a league full of teams making promises, only a few actually project championship-level credibility. That kind of conversation carries real weight, and it hits differently in this moment. In one block, we talked about a player who could come back. In another, a market opportunity that depends on timing. Then a draft prospect who could help protect the future. But here, the signal is stronger because it's already beyond speculation. Evans confirmed Kittle's impact. Shanahan confirmed how valuable those kinds of leaders are. So it's not a stretch to say the Niners locker room helps close deals. That raises the ceiling, and it raises the pressure too. Because if this franchise already has respected leadership, a culture players believe in, and legitimate pull with major veterans, then there's no excuse to treat this championship window like business as usual. Expectations go up, the standard goes up, the demand goes up. You don't build this kind of identity just to stay in the mix. You build it to finish the job. And there's one more thing here that really stands out to me. George Kittle isn't showing up here just as a star player. He's showing up as a guardian of the team's identity. A guy who can sell the vision because he genuinely believes in the vision. And for a fan base that wants to see Santa Clara attack the title without hesitation, that means a lot. So now I want the pulse from Niners fans. Did the Mike Evans addition, combined with this behind-the-scenes role from Kittle, make you believe even more that San Francisco is building a championship roster? Or do you still think there's one more major move missing? At the end of all this, the read feels pretty simple. Deebo Samuel puts a roster need back in the spotlight. Joey Bosa represents a market opening that could get more real. Michael Trigg points to medium-term roster protection. And Mike Evans with George Kittle shows that the internal strength of this franchise is still very much intact. 4 different signals, one same conclusion. The title window is open, and the pressure is already here. So now I want to hear from you for real. Which one of these developments affects the Niners' ceiling the most? Drop it in the comments, leave a like if you want more videos with this kind of behind-the-scenes read, And subscribe, because every move from here in Santa Clara can either push this team closer to the Super Bowl or make hesitation cost them.